Elias Thorne was known throughout the city as the man who could catch a falling star. At least, that was the metaphor his overworked employees used. As the founder and CEO of Novatech Solutions, he had built a digital empire from his dorm room, and he ran it with the relentless, burning energy of a collapsing sun. He thrived on pressure. He believed it was the only force that could forge diamonds. His days were a blur of back-to-back meetings, frantic emails, and the constant, low-grade hum of anxiety that he mistook for ambition. His office, perched on the 47th floor, was a glass and chrome monument to his success. But to Elias, it felt more like the bridge of a starship under constant attack. Deadlines were incoming missiles, quarterly projections were uncharted nebulae, and his competitors were hostile alien armadas. One Tuesday, the attacks became a full-scale war. The lead developer on their flagship project, a man Elias had personally groomed, resigned to join a rival firm. The project, codenamed Chimera, was now 6 months behind schedule and hemorrhaging money. An hour later, his head of communications burst in, pale-faced, to announce that a scathing article about Novatech's toxic work culture had just gone viral. And to cap it off, his largest investor had left 3 increasingly terse voicemails demanding an immediate call. Elias stared at his 3 monitors, each a portal to a fresh disaster. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat urging him to fight, to fix, to move. He grabbed his phone to return the investor's call, his thumb hovering over the button, when a strange thing happened. He didn't press it. Instead, he put the phone down. He swiveled his chair away from the screens. He looked out the vast window at the city, sprawling beneath him, a circuit board of lights beginning to flicker on in the dusk. The pressure in his chest was a physical weight, a hot, tight band constricting his lungs. He could feel the familiar, seductive pull of panic, the urge to sprint faster on the hamster wheel. But for the first time in 20 years, he resisted. He remembered a line from a book his late mother used to read to him, a story about a boy who could calm the ocean by whispering to it. "The storm is not in the waves, Elias," she'd translate, "but in the heart that fears them." He was the boy, and his heart was a typhoon. He took a breath, not the shallow, frantic gasps he'd been surviving on, but a deep, deliberate inhalation, drawing the air all the way down to his belly. He held it for a moment, feeling his ribcage expand, pushing against the band of pressure. Then he let it out, slowly, a long, soft sigh that seemed to carry a fraction of the tension with it. He did it again and again. The frantic hum in his mind didn't vanish, but it began to recede, like the volume being turned down on a chaotic symphony. The 3 monitors no longer looked like 3-headed monsters, but simply as 3 problems. Difficult, but manageable. He reached for a notepad, a physical, paper notepad, a relic from his pre-digital life, and a pen. He wrote down 3 words. 1. Chimera. 2. Culture. 3. Investor. Under each, he began to write, not a plan of attack, but simple, honest observations. Under Chimera, he wrote, "Lead dev gone, project delayed, money burning, panic doesn't code, who is our second best?" Under Culture, he wrote, "Article is perception, but is there truth? When did we stop caring how we work?" Under Investor, he wrote, "He's scared, he wants reassurance, not excuses." What is the one true thing I can tell him? The act of writing, of slowing down his thoughts enough to form letters on a page, was revolutionary. It was like clearing the static from a radio signal until only the music remained. The problems were still there, sharp and real, but they were no longer a formless, terrifying mass. They were individual tasks. He picked up his phone and, instead of calling the investor, he called his former lead developer. The man answered, his voice wary. "Mark," Elias said, his own voice calm and steady, a stark contrast to the frantic tone Mark was expecting. "I got your resignation letter. I won't try to change your mind about leaving. But I am calling to apologize. For the late nights, for the impossible deadlines, for making you feel like a machine instead of a person. I'm sorry." There was a long silence on the other end. "Elias?" "Yeah, I'm learning that being a founder isn't just about building a product. It's about building a place where people want to build with you. I failed at that. I'm going to try to fix it. If you ever want to talk about the project or anything else, my door is open. No strings." He hung up. He hadn't fixed the problem, but he had planted a seed. He had acted from a place of calm clarity, not panic coercion. Next, He called his head of communications. He didn't demand a spin strategy or a press release. He asked her to schedule a series of small, honest meetings with every team in the company over the next 2 weeks. "I want to listen," he told her. "I want to hear what it's really like to work here. No repercussions, just the truth." Finally, he called the investor. "Jerry," he said, his voice carrying the same quiet certainty, "I know you're worried. Shimura is in trouble. I'm not going to tell you a story about how it's all fine, but I am going to tell you what I'm doing about it. I'm going to tell you the truth, step by step, and the first step is that I'm stopping the panic." He didn't pitch, he didn't plead. He simply laid out the situation as he saw it, with the same calm clarity he'd found at his window. He talked about Mark, about the culture meetings, about his own realization. When he finished, Jerry was quiet for a moment. "Elias," the investor finally said, a hint of surprise in his voice, "I've known you for 10 years. I've never heard you like this. You sound peaceful." "It's unsettling," he chuckled, "but it's also the most confident I've ever felt in you. You're not just fighting the fire anymore. You're rebuilding the house. Call me next week with an update." Elias hung up. The pressure was still there. The deadlines hadn't moved. The project was still behind, but the weight of it all had shifted. It was no longer a crushing force on his shoulders, but a manageable load in his hand. He looked out the window again. The city was a glittering constellation. He thought of his mother and the boy who calmed the ocean. He realized he hadn't calmed the ocean. The ocean was still vast and powerful and full of storms, but he had learned to calm the sailor. Over the following weeks, Elias didn't become a different person. He still worked hard. He still cared deeply about Novatech, but he started each day with 10 minutes by the window, just breathing. He took a real lunch break, often walking in the park across the street. He started answering emails in focused batches instead of letting them dictate his every waking moment. He listened in those team meetings, and what he heard was painful. But it was also the blueprint for a better company. The lead developer, Mark, didn't come back, but he did start answering Elias's calls, offering advice. He told a mutual friend, "Elias finally sounds like a human being. It's weird, but it's also kind of great." The culture didn't change overnight, but a shift began. People started to see their CEO in the hallways, not just as a blur rushing to a meeting, but as someone who would stop and ask how their weekend was and actually wait for the answer. And Chimera? It didn't launch on the original schedule. It launched 3 months late, but it launched, and it was the best product Novatech had ever built, because the team that built it was no longer running on fear and caffeine, but on focus and a shared sense of purpose. Elias never conquered the pressure. He made peace with it. He learned that true strength wasn't about withstanding the storm without flinching. It was about finding the quiet eye within yourself, where the winds are still and the decisions are clear. He had stopped trying to outrun the waves, and in doing so, had finally learned to sail. Moral: you can't solve problems effectively from a place of panic. Stepping back to find mental clarity isn't avoiding pressure. It's the first and most important step to overcoming it.